On the 17th of March 2015, Israel held one of its most important elections to date. Rarely has the political divide between left and right been so emotional and high-tensioned. Rarely have the results of an Israeli election been so consequential to the future of Israel and what will become of Israel. Prior to the elections, early polls predicted that the left would rise to power and will be the end of Bibi's era. However, the actual results of the elections were very different. Bibi and his Likud party had a landslide victory, and they are now in the process of forming their coalition government. To discuss these elections, their results and their implications, we have Adi Agasi. Adi is a member of Likud, and she's also a member of an organization within the Likud called the New Likudniks. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So Adi, let's just start off with you explaining what the New Likudniks organization is.
Okay.
And then we'll kick off with some questions.
Okay, so the New Likudniks is a group of people like you and me, unrelated to any organization or any group, just normal people from the middle class that after 2011, when we had all those big demonstrations in the streets, and we saw that nothing is changing, some of us started to wonder how come and what is going on. I mean, 500,000 people stepped out to the streets and said, we want change, we want something different.
Wasn't the majority of those marching the streets and those demonstrations from the left side of the political map?
Not
no?
necessarily.
Okay.
I know that a lot of people tend to think that it was a left organization that organized it. It wasn't.
Right.
It was just, at least from my perspective, from how I felt when I stepped out. Well, I lived in Tel Aviv, so it was very easy. But I felt that it's just a lot of people that felt that after too many years that Israel has, the Israel politic parties place their focus on safety and military stuff and security. It is time to start focusing on internal issues, society and economy and other things. And it felt that the government is not doing that. That's why people stepped out, because they felt that it's too expensive to live here and it's time to make a change, but nothing changed. Right. So we started looking around, digging around. A friend of mine, I didn't know him at the time, a guy named Lior Meiri, he realized that the way that the big parties work is based on the people that are members of those parties, not just the citizens around that go in the elections and put a number, but the person that is actually registering to the party and becoming a member, like me. He is the one that is actually choosing later on during the primaries the members of the party.
So during the elections within the party itself,
exactly,
people who are members of this party get to choose who
the
members of the future government if they should win the election.
Right, the leader of the company, of the party, Benjamin Netanyahu in this case, and anyone else like Dani Danon, Miri Regev, Moshe Yalon.
So let me make sure I understand. So you thought you would be a lot more effective, you'd have a lot more power if you were to become a member of these big parties, and then have much more influence on who gets selected as a potential future leader of this country, and thereby exert your influence and take it in the direction which you wish to take.
Because eventually the single people are listening to the members that are choosing them because they want to be chosen again.
Right.
So they're doing what the members tell them, not what the citizens in the street tell them.
I get it. So if I understand you correctly, does that mean that people who did what you did and joined the Likud party are not necessarily naturally Likudniks? If they think this is a way in which to influence Israeli politics, it makes sense to me that they would not necessarily have to come from a Likud background, but rather...
Most of them are. Most of them are coming from the right side. There are, I'm not saying...
Right wing, you mean?
Right wing, yeah. Okay. Not everybody necessarily voted for the Likud in the last few years. Me, for example, I voted for other right parties. when I didn't feel that the Likud was right for me. But even those that are not definitely right-winged, they're somewhere in the center or slightly left, not extremist in any way, neither left nor right. That's people that believe that the constitution of the Likud is representing them properly.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so now that we know where you come from and what you represent, let's kick off with some tough questions.
Okay.
So as I said in the introduction, the Likud won the election. Right? Some have called it landslide. And it seems as if the government that's going to be formed is a predominantly a right-wing government. Okay, Bibi's natural partners in forming the coalition are mainly, as it seems at the moment, right-wing. Now, Bibi has been on record not too long ago saying that he withdrew his support to a two-state solution. He then went back on his word and said that he does support it. He supports a two-state solution. And what he said
before, the current partner,
yes.
is not.
But he's obviously made it very ambiguous and not very clear as to whether he supports it or not. And there were a few days between making that first statement and then correcting himself where people weren't sure whether he supports it or not. So, he wasn't very eager to make it very clear. So going by his position, aren't we taking giant leaps toward a one-state solution with all its implications? And when I say all its implications, I mean if we do become a one-state solution, we will no longer be Israel as we know it today. In other words, a Jewish democratic state.
Right. I agree with you. Therefore, I'm not sure that we're going towards one state. I think that I can't speak for Bibi or anyone in his party, and I know that a lot of people has this fear. I know that the president, for example, is, as far as I know, supporting a one state. Correct?
The president will be supports a one state. If it does, you know what? If it does, that worries me. But I don't know if it does.
I know that they've always been fighting about this, Netanyahu and Rivlin. But anyway, Benjamin Netanyahu eventually, it seems like he does support the two-state solution, and he knows why. Because, like you said, if we do become one state, we're no longer going to be a Jewish majority, probably. I don't think it's a good solution for anyone. I think that even the Beit Yehudi, Naftali Bennett's party, understands that somewhere deep inside, even if they're trying to be the bad kid fighting everybody. Eventually, the Likud party has 30 members. It has the majority of the people in the coalition. And I think that most of them do feel like Netanyahu feels like. So again, I can't speak for him, but I feel that we will eventually have the two-state solution. But both Benjamin Netanyahu as well as Bougie Herzog, by the way, they both declared that the current partner is not someone that we can work with.
Okay, so let's just pick up on that. Okay,
but I do think that both of them want two-state solution. Eventually.
Well, yeah, I mean,
eventually.
I'm pretty sure about Bougie, and I respect your opinion about Bibi, although I'm not too certain about that. And I'll tell you why I'm not certain about that, and why I'm very doubtful as to your optimism. You say that you think Bibi is for a two-state solution, but his actions on the ground, say otherwise. Bibi has this tendency to say something and then realize he said the wrong thing and then correct himself. It's not the first time he does it. But just going back to this issue of a one-state, two-state solution, he may. You know what? I accept that even Bibi, although I don't truly believe it, but I accept that maybe even he wants a two-state solution. But he'll never get a two-state solution if he carries on with the actions that he follows now. And if I put into that equation his coalition members, his future coalition members, and you say, oh, there's 30 members in that coalition, in the Likud party, and it's a critical mass of people who could pull him away from that idea. But I'm not even certain that the majority of these 30 30 Likud members are willing to go for the compromise that will take for a two-state solution. Again, I'm not talking about things they say. I'm just solely looking at the actions they're taking. And this is what worries me. It's ironic because if you speak to Israel's worst enemies amongst the Palestinians, amongst the Arab countries. Their number one objective is a one-state solution. They don't want that. No, they do.
They do.
Their biggest wish is a one-state solution. Do you know why? Because even they realize it's the end of the Jewish state. And it's ironic to me that it seems as if that the people on the far right of Israel, some of Netanyahu's future coalition members, and Israel's worst enemies have the same goal.
I agree.
And you said earlier that you also you fear that as well, but you don't believe. Look at the facts on the ground. It's not only that the two-state solution is probably not going to happen. It's dead and buried. Okay. I don't think it can be brought back, given the circumstances, given the situation. Well,
the current reality. It may not be available for us right now. I do believe that in the future it will be available.
Even if with this government for the next 4 years, this particular coalition, Naftali Bennett is on record saying he's never, ever, ever going to give up a single centimetre of land.
Well, Naftali Bennett has only 8 members in the coalition, and Lieberman has only 6, and him and Bibi are
That's
not
14 members.
They're not on talking terms, but the Beit Yehudi and the Israel Beitenu are not necessarily working together because they have a lot of disagreements among themselves on religion issues. And then you have 30 Likud members and 10 members of Kahlon, and then you have Shas, who doesn't really care too much about those issues.
Okay.
And eventually, it seems like if we're looking on the past, it was much easier for right-winged governments to bring back land than left-wing, because the coalition, the right-wing coalition, was more supportive in such a painful steps. And eventually, yes, I know it doesn't look like this, but I do believe that we won't really have a choice. Eventually, Benjamin Netanyahu will face a situation where he would have to make a decision, and I know that he doesn't speak like that. He says what he knows that his voters want to hear, and he's doing what he knows people want to see him doing. But when it comes to the bottom line and actually taking the steps, just like Ariel Sharon had to give back land and do a very painful step in order to improve things. By the way, it didn't really help, but he did that.
Yeah.
Benjamin Netanyahu will have to do that eventually. We all know that in the back of our mind.
Well, yeah. I mean, the difference with Sharon is that Sharon had slightly different coalition members that I think were easier to work with in terms of giving back land. But okay, so you don't think that the two-state solution is dead, and I do, and probably we're not going to resolve that just now. Okay. Now, you mentioned religion earlier. I think there's like 3 main issues that I fear with the right-wing government. The first of which we discussed was one state versus a two-state solution. The second is really religion. And the third is the Arab citizens within Israel. So let's talk about religion. Okay. Now, the Likud's, again, natural partners, or I'll say it differently, the religious parties are more affiliated with Likud rather than with the left. So
not necessarily. Beit Yehudi does, but when it comes to Shas and Agudat Israel, the
Shas are going to be in the coalition now, aren't they?
Right, but the ultra-orthodox parties can go in coalition both with the left and with the right, as long as they get what they want.
Yes, but they.
So every government, whether it's left or right, would probably suggest something for them, because for them, as long as they get what they need, it doesn't really matter.
I agree, but I think Bibi has got a record of being more inclined to give them what they want, and so it makes
for a more stable coalition. It makes sense, yes.
Well, so this is the situation we're at now, and so religion. To me, that is just as much to have in our society. And when I say religion, I'm specifically talking about the ultra-orthodox religious society within the Israeli society. I don't know how many people outside of Israel know this, but this is a society which the majority of which probably does not hold a steady job, does not serve in the army. Most of there's some exceptions, obviously, both to those
I will express my opinion about that.
Sure. And a right-wing government, as I said, Bibi is inclined to give them what they want, have them in the coalition, and cement that relationship. A relationship where within the Israeli society you have a sector which has a very high percentage of people not working, a very high percentage of people not serving the army. They are a great weight on everyone else's shoulders. Not to mention their education system, whereby sciences are not taught, which means that their potential to contribute later on when they graduate from school to the workforce, to scientific research, to the general prosperity and progress of Israel is very, very limited. And this sector is steadily growing. I'm very concerned about that, and I want to hear your opinion about it.
Okay, well, some corrections, first of all. The situation that you described was more correct in previous years. I know for a fact, and because I'm involved in such projects and talking to people, that the ultra-Orthodox society, it has many streams and branches, but more and more members of this community are actively searching for ways to improve their education, to get into the working cycle. My husband is part of such a project.
Right.
But
is it enough though? I mean, isn't it just one drop in a big ocean? Is it
no,
on a scale?
It's way more than one drop. And you know, it's something that it takes time to improve, but it has started and it's growing. There is actually a group of people like me, the Likud members, that are ultra-Orthodox, that do push for such a way of life, combining the ultra-Orthodox people more and more in the working world, and the ultra-Orthodox world is very complex and very closed, so it's really difficult to know what is going on there, so we don't know a lot, but I do know that there's a lot of activities going on of people rejecting the current situation and want to change it. And there's a lot of help for those people from the Likud members. It's not in the media, and it's not something that we're talking about and you know about. It's in the background, and it's happening, and it's changing. And I also believe that having Kahlon's party, Moshe Kahlon's party in the coalition would also help there, because to my knowledge, Kahlon is supporting a free market and is not supporting giving them back the assistance, the financial assistance that the government was giving them in the past, which was stopped. So, you know, the Likud is a liberal democratic party that is not supporting socialism as a way of life. And I know that the education minister in the previous coalition was also adding additional theories other than 6 days of creating the world. It also added Darwin's theory and stuff like that.
What, to religious schools?
Also to religious schools. I read about it. I don't know if it's true. I read about it.
Let's keep it honest and let's keep it real. Do you honestly believe that within Orthodox Jewish schools they teach Darwin?
I know that
because they may say a lot of things, but
I know I was in an Orthodox school and I've learned about it. I've heard about it.
You learned about it in an Orthodox school?
Yeah, I was in biology class, and we've learned about that. So it really depends on the level of the school. But the fact that I know about it, the fact that my siblings that are still Orthodox know about it, means that it exists.
Well, they may know about it, but they probably think it's, you know, they probably have a very strong opinion.
No, well, we won't get into it because, but coming from the Orthodox world, by the way, I know that there are a lot of Orthodox approaches that combine Darwin and the biblical story together. They don't contradict each other, saying that, you know, the 6 days are not really 6 days, it's 6 million years, blah blah blah. Anyway, going back to what we started with, the ultra-Orthodox members in Israel are changing. The society is changing, and it's trying to more and more combine themselves into the rest of the society. Of course, there are still extremists, and there are still people that won't do it and would shut themselves down, but you see that they're opening up. And there is a shift, and there is a wind of change there, and the Likud party is taking part of that. So,
are you comfortable? Okay, you mentioned that they're changing, there are winds of change, and they're opening up, etc. Are you comfortable with the fact that, for example, let's talk about the army service. You know, one of the Pete's main flags, as it were, in his campaign was the fact that he passed a law that would make it compulsory for religious people to share the burden, okay, which Israeli society has to put up with, and that is military service. Let's put politics aside and let's just talk fairness. And again, let's try and be honest here. How fair is it, do you think, that the religious people do not have to serve in the army as a compulsory service, while others risk their lives, spend 3 years of their lives in doing so, for their benefit as well?
Mm-hmm.
So politics aside, I just want to understand whether first of all you think that's fair.
Of course I don't think it's fair, but okay. I want to be more accurate about the PID's law. Mm-hmm. The law that he passed, to my knowledge, is actually saying that the IDF has the first right to tell each person at the age of 18 whether he is needed or not. Mm-hmm. It is not necessarily forcing every Orthodox person to join. But so if the IDF says, I need you, come over, then that person must come. If he says, right. If he says, I don't need you, then go. And like I said, ultra-Orthodox people do join the army now. There are more and more of them that join. Still, it's developing. It's just started. But
yeah, sorry.
The way that I see it, and I guess you would agree with me, let's start with the fact that the IDF need to be more efficient. It doesn't have to bring everyone. As every other organization. We all want it to be more efficient. Yeah. So, I believe that the best way would be not necessarily forcing everyone to join the army, but having a better law that would say every person in Israel must provide 2 years of their life at the age of 18 that would serve the country either in the IDF, if the IDF needs that person, or in national service, like a lot of religious women do, etc. So I believe this law should also apply for ultra-Orthodox. And I believe it's correct, and I think it should be left or improved. And I know. Have you got any inside information from the Likud whether it is promoting such a law? I know for a fact that as part of the group that I'm part of, the new Likudniks, we've inserted a Likud member to the 19th place. Right. His name is Yoav Kish, and he was one of the leaders of the initiative to have an equal service for everyone. Right. And he's certainly going to push for that in the upcoming coalition. It's a fact. He's stating that. So now you have that responsibility on your young shoulders. and you have to follow that closely. Okay. Hopefully. Yeah. And if you won't do that, by the way, we will choose someone else in the next election. So is that an example of the sort of influence that you wish to bring into the party? Right. And don't get me wrong, though I did vote for the Likud, for tons of reasons, by the way, and we won't get into them. I have a lot of criticism on the party, and a lot of criticism towards Mr. Netanyahu. I think that the Likud, the reason I joined is because the Likud kind of lost its way. The constitution of the Likud says that it's a liberal democratic party which provides equal rights to everyone regardless of their skin color, their gender, their sexual preferences, or their religion. So both Arabs and Jews must have the same rights, and this is what the Likud originally stands for. And a lot of new people were entering. Yet on the day of election, Bibi made a point of urging Jews to go and vote because Arabs were being loaded onto buses and rushed. Very bad saying. I agree with you. Another example of Bibi making a statement and then thinking later. As I said, he's done it plenty of times, and he's done it in this case again. Bibi is a survivor. Bibi is a politician, and he's a survivor, and he's saying what he needs to say. Yes, but a person in his position, with his responsibility, with his title, being Prime Minister of all of the citizens of Israel, should not say that. Should not say that, whether he's a survivor or not. That is, there's certain things you just should not say. I agree. Or even do, but Right. That's part of the criticism I have for him. However, I must say that I was surprised when he apologized. Because he hardly ever apologizes for I was not surprised when he apologized because, as you say, he's a survivor and that's part of his survival. So, but it was after the election. He doesn't owe anything to anyone right now anymore, so to speak. And he did go and apologize. Well, okay. Again, I'm not trying to make him look like a big, amazing person. I think that he has a lot of mistakes. And going back again to Yoav Kish, by the way, he was the first one to state, right after he was elected into the Knesset, he was the first one to state that there is a huge problem here between races and between groups, and it has to be corrected.
Okay.
And he stated specifically that there's too much violence going from the right to the left, and too much patronizing going from the left to the right, and those both issues must be corrected, and he's going to act upon that as well.
Right.
It's another mission.
Yes. Well, we're talking about the Likud and the right now. There's also criticism towards the left, obviously, but we're just focusing on this for now.
But the fact that a member in the Likud stated that the day after the election, so, boldly out there on Facebook and saying that everywhere, I love that.
So my response to that is a shame that only one did it,
I
and
know,
not most.
And that's why I'm a member of the party, to make sure more people like that are joining.
I'm glad. So we touched a bit on the racism issue and raised Bibi's infamous statement on the eve of elections. What's your position regarding the treatment of Arab Israelis in Israel, their position in our society in terms of social equality, discrimintion, etc.?
Definitely must be improved.
Okay.
No doubt about that. If I remember correctly, when the Israeli Arabs were asked if a Palestinian state, once a Palestinian state would come to exist, where would they rather live? I believe that most of them still would prefer living in Israel, because it's a living democracy with a lot of experience, and it's much more progressing already. And I think that the Israeli state must no doubt improve the way that we treat them.
Do you think that the majority of members of Likud feel the same as you? Or do you think you're like kind of slightly, the odd one out in terms of your thinking?
No, I think that the majority of the 30 members, I think like.
No, I'm not talking about the 30 members. I'm talking about, for example, in the primary elections where the Likud members come and cast their vote for who's going to lead the party. Those kind of people who influence what the Likud is about and who gets voted as to lead the Likud. The
members of my group, which are about 3,500, they do agree with me.
Yeah, because you're talking about the new Likudniks.
Right.
But I'm actually
talking about other groups. It depends, because the other groups are consisted of many different areas. I mean, there are groups like the electric company, for example, that are joining the Likud for their own financial benefits, and they don't really care about other issues, and they're not the only ones. That's an example of people joining the Likud.
But they're doing
settlers also joining because they want more land.
But they're doing exactly what you're doing. In other words, you joined the Likud to exert your influence for your own interests, and they're doing exactly the same thing.
There's a difference, because the settlers and the members of the different companies are joining just to have more benefits for the electric company, or to have more synagogues built.
And you want benefits for who? For everyone?
For everyone. I'm choosing the Likud members that are showing that they're not succumbing for lobbyists and tycoons, and they're not giving in for strong settler groups and giving them more on the expense of the rest of the people. I'm voting for those who are not bringing up racist law offers or anything like that, and I'm voting for those who are proving each and every time that they are supporting equal rights for everyone. Whether it's Boogie alone that is supporting gay marriage, for example, or Gila Gamliel that is doing a lot of financial initiatives for the goods of the people rather than lobbyists and tycoons. And I will never vote, for example, for Dani Danon and Miri Regev, and Yariv Levin or Zev Elkin, who constantly show that they are preferring the Jewish citizens over the Arab citizens.
So, given what you know about the makeup of the Likud party, with you guys now in it, and the potential coalition which is going to be formed, how optimistic are you for Israel's future for the next 4 years?
It's a tough question. I agree. It's a tough question. When I voted for the Likud, I never thought they would have 30 mandates.
That shocked everyone, didn't it?
It shocked everyone.
Likudniks themselves. Yes. Bibi was probably shocked by that.
Yes.
Okay.
I voted because, first of all, I wanted my friend Yoav Kish to be part of it, and it felt like the Likud is right on the verge of somewhere around 19, 20 mandates. So I voted for them. And I also voted because, personally, I don't find Bougie Herzog as a proper leader. I respect him as a person. I'm not sure he could have led Israel better than Benjamin Netanyahu. Yeah. I voted for the least worst, not for the best.
But did you have in mind that this least worst, which is, you probably only saw the Likud, but did you also think about the fact that this least worst is going to be in coalition with a predominantly right-wing government, some of which is very extreme? The prospects for peace are almost zero. The prospects for prosperity and for Israel's progress accordingly, with no prospect for peace, they're probably zero as well. Delegitimization of Israel, calls for boycotts, etc., etc.
Well, let's start with the fact that
did you have that in mind as well?
I wasn't, first of all, sure that the Likud would have the coalition. Let's start with that. I know that Likud would normally go with the right-wing parties. However, I look at it differently. If you look at Yachad party, that's the extremist party. They didn't get in.
Right.
Naftali Bennett lost 4 mandates.
To Bibi, by the way.
He lost 4 mandates from an extreme right to a right party.
Okay.
Lieberman lost some as well. Kahlon, which is closer to Netanyahu and the Likud in his opinions, won 10 mandates. I think that Mr. Lapid should have give up his ego and join the coalition, but that's another thing. So the way I see it, it's not as it's less extreme than it was. Extremist people were left out, and prior to that, Moshe Feiglin, which is also extremist in his opinion, was left out of the Likud, partly because of us. So the way I see it, it's right-winged, but it's not as extreme as it was. I don't know what to tell you about the future. I have no idea. It was the same if it was the left winning.
I disagree.
However, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But because I think that the left would, ask for more taxes and would give up land more easily and would risk us more like it was in the past. I don't really know. I'm just guessing like anyone else. But I'm quite optimistic, way more than it was in the previous elections. Honestly, way more.
The only optimism I've taken away from what you said was the fact, and it is true that some of the more extreme, people will find this hard to believe, but it's actually more extreme than what is in the coalition now. And those very extreme parties were actually kind of wiped out from the political map. So in that respect, I take that optimism away. But I have to say, I have no optimism whatsoever as a whole for the future of Israel, at least for the next 4 years. But maybe miracles happen. So let's just wrap it up there. Thank you very much. It's been fascinating.
Thank you.